There are nights when we toss and turn, not because of anything specific, but because a quiet unease slips into our minds, a message left unanswered, a comment that stings, or simply the vague sense of what has yet to come. But here's the truth: that fear and anxiety do not arise from the outside world. They begin within, from how we perceive, judge, and imagine. We build invisible cages, then trap ourselves inside them. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor, yes, but also a man like us, faced uncertainty, pressure, and solitude. Yet he did not surrender. He learned to observe his own mind, to step back from destructive emotions, and to slowly forge an inner citadel. In today's video, we will not learn how to eliminate fear, because that is impossible. Instead, we will learn how to walk through it, to rise above ourselves through 7 Stoic principles. These are not ancient relics of thought. They are tools for living, practical, profound, and powerful. 1. Reframing perception. Change how you see. Change everything. We grow up believing that fear and anxiety are the result of life's events: losing a job, a breakup, failure, rejection. But look deeper and you'll see they don't truly come from those events. Instead, they arise from how we interpret them. This is the starting point for understanding the power of perception, a core principle of Stoic philosophy. Imagine you are about to give an important presentation. Your hands tremble, your heart races, and your mind spins through worst-case scenarios. What if I forget my lines? What if they laugh at me? What if I fail? But here's it: the presentation hasn't happened yet. All that frightens you exists only in your mind. We create that fear by filling the unknown with negative imagination. Marcus Aurelius, a man both emperor and keen observer of the inner life, once reminded himself, "It is not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgment of them. Between what happens and how we react, there is always a space, and in that space, we hold the power to choose. That choice is perception, how we view the situation." This may sound simple, but to live it demands awareness. Most of the time we don't truly see the problem. We see it through a lens colored by emotion, prejudice, and old wounds. Someone ignores us on the street. We assume they look down on us. A message goes unanswered. We rush to believe we've been abandoned. These snap judgments are the root of much unnecessary anxiety. Stoicism doesn't ask us to deny emotion. On the contrary, it teaches us to recognize emotions, trace them to their source, and shift how we respond. Rather than hastily labeling something as good or bad, we learn to pause, breathe, observe, ask, "Am I overreacting? Is there a more rational and constructive way to see this?" We cannot control the world, but we can train ourselves to control how we perceive it. And in that lies inner freedom. When perception changes, everything changes, not because the world shifts, but because we stop being victims of our own negative thoughts. Take a simple example. You miss your morning bus. A stressful day lies ahead, and now you feel ready to explode. But pause. Try reframing it. Instead of thinking, "A terrible day is starting," you could think, "I have a few extra minutes to breathe, to notice life around me, or to reset my mind before the day begins." A small shift in perception can trigger a ripple effect that reshapes your emotional landscape. Reframing perception also helps us move beyond past wounds. Many carry the weight of rejection, abandonment, or inadequacy for years. But if we learn to revisit those experiences with a more mature, compassionate eye, we see this. Every hardship holds a lesson. Every failure helped forge the strength we now possess. Nothing is meaningless if we're willing to look back with understanding. Stoic philosophy is not reserved for rare moments. It is a way of life where we learn to face the world with reason, acceptance, and courage. Every day, Every event, no matter how small, is an opportunity to sharpen our awareness of how we perceive. And this is the most vital truth. We are not obligated to believe everything our mind tells us. We can learn to sit with the chaos of our thoughts, sift through them, and ask, is this the only truth? Is there another way of seeing this that brings me peace? That conscious act of thinking is the foundation of emotional self-mastery. When perception shifts, fear begins to fade. Anxiety no longer holds the chains, and peace slowly emerges, not because the world has grown gentler, but because we have learned to see it with new eyes. 2. Focus on what you can control. Let go of what was never yours. One of the greatest sources of our anxiety, exhaustion, and confusion is the constant attempt to control what was never ours to begin with. We worry about how others see us, feel lost when outcomes don't match our expectations, grow angry at bad weather, or disappointed when people don't treat us the way we hoped. And in doing so, we forget the most important truth. Much of life lies outside our control. Stoicism emphasizes that to live with peace and strength, we must learn to distinguish between two things: what is within our power and what is not. What we can control are our thoughts, actions, choice, efforts, and personal values. What we cannot control are others' emotions, opinions, external circumstances, and the final outcomes of our actions. When we pour our energy into what lies beyond our reach, we lose our inner power, and that is the root of suffering. Consider a familiar situation. You apply for your dream job. You spend days perfecting your resume, practicing interviews, refining your answers, but in the end, you get rejected. Disappointment, self-doubt, even anger rise to the surface. You start thinking, why didn't they choose me? What did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? But look closer, and you'll see. You did everything within your control, prepared thoroughly, showed up honestly and responsibly. Not being selected, some stress, is simply because someone else was a better fit, or the employer was looking for something different. That part is no longer yours. We need to understand that control is not the same as resignation. On the contrary, it is intelligent discernment. When we focus our mind on what we truly govern, we become more effective, more proactive, and less shaken by results. This helps us remain calm in failure and humble in success, because we recognize our limits. In a world increasingly chaotic, with social media, news, and social expectations pressing in, knowing what we have the power to control becomes a kind of psychological armor. We cannot control the market's trends, a global pandemic, or someone suddenly walking out of our lives, but we can control our response, to choose calm over panic, acceptance over blame, and forward motion over paralysis. One practical exercise we can apply daily is to ask ourselves, is this within my control? If the answer is yes, act with full intention without delay. If the answer is no, practice letting go. Don't waste time or emotion on it. For example, when you post something meaningful on social media, you can control the content, the quality, the message, but not who likes it, who misunderstands it, or whether it spreads. If your self-worth depends on external feedback, you will live in constant instability. But if your fulfillment comes from the process itself, from doing your best, you will be free. Focusing on what we can control is also how we build resilient inner strength. When we stop being pulled by the world outside, we begin to invest time and energy inward, cultivating good habits, sharpening thought, learning new skills, and living in alignment with our core values. From this, a sense of sovereignty emerges, not because we control others, but because we've mastered ourselves. A person who understands this principle will not be easily puppeteered. They are not swayed by praise, nor crushed by criticism. They may feel sadness or pain, but they don't let those feelings dictate their actions. They learn to see each situation as an observer, not a captive to the storm. And in today's noisy world, that is a rare and valuable kind of strength. When we clearly know what belongs to us, we stop clinging to what we cannot control, like the past, the future, or another person's emotions. Instead, we become steady, grounded, and bring our full attention to the present, the only place where action is possible. In the end, letting go is not indifference. Letting go is a conscious choice. It is choosing to focus where we can make a difference, choosing to release what clouds the mind, choosing to live responsibly for what is in our hands, and to be free from the rest. 3. Live in the present. The power lies in this very moment. There's a strange paradox in the way we live. We're always physically here, yet our minds are often elsewhere. Our bodies sit in the present room, but our thoughts drift back to the past, haunted by regrets, wounds, and mistakes. Or they race toward the future, where imagined scenarios stir anxiety, tension, and disconnection from life itself. We often forget that all we truly have is this very moment, not tomorrow, not next year, not what has already passed. Right now is where we can breathe, choose, act, and change. Stoicism holds living in the present as a foundational path to inner peace. Only when we are present are we truly alive. Fear and anxiety almost always accompany absence from what is real in favor of what is imagined. We foresee failure, picture the worst, and react as if it's already happened. This agitates the mind, exhausts the body, and drains our emotions. Imagine sitting at dinner with family, but your mind is consumed by tomorrow's deadline. You walk through nature, but keep checking your phone for who liked your latest post. Or worse, you're resting, yet tormented by a conversation that went wrong yesterday. All of this steals the present moment, and gradually, it robs us of our quality of life. Living in the present doesn't mean forgetting the past or refusing to plan for the future. It means not letting the past imprison us, nor the future frighten us. It is awareness. It is the ability to say, I am here. I am still breathing. I still have the power to choose what is right. And here's the wonder. The moment we become truly present, we free ourselves from countless invisible burdens. One powerful tool for training presence is observing the breath. You don't need deep meditation. Simply pause. Inhale slowly. Feel the air fill your body. Then exhale gently. Just 30 seconds of this can bring you back to yourself. The breath is a gateway to the present because it exists only here, not in the past, not in the future. Another way is to practice mindfulness in small actions. When washing dishes, just wash dishes. When eating, just eat. When walking, feel each step. It sounds simple, but this is a deep practice that reunites the mind and body, bringing harmony into a single stream of being. We must also learn to release our need to control time. One reason we fail to live fully is because we constantly want things to unfold exactly as planned. But life doesn't follow anyone's map. Accepting that the present is all we truly have not only brings peace, but also makes us more adaptive, resilient, and creative. A question we can ask ourselves each day is, am I truly present in what I'm doing right now? If the answer is no, don't blame yourself. Gently return. Living in the present is a practice, not a permanent state you achieve once and for all. It is a deliberate act repeated every day. We should also remember, only the present gives us the power to act. The past is gone. You can't rethaw it. No matter how much you wish, the future hasn't come. No amount of worry will make it more certain. But right now, you can choose a small action. Shift your mindset. Send an apology. Write a plan. Or simply drink a glass of water and let yourself rest. Every small act in the present is a building block for the future you desire. The power of the present is also where fear weakens most, because when you fully focus on what's happening, on the task before you, the person speaking to you, the breath flowing through you, there's no room left for imagined doom. You cannot live fully and fear something that hasn't happened at the same time. When you are present, you are powerful. And one more thing. Living in the present makes us more deeply grateful. We begin to see beauty in the seemingly ordinary. The sunlight slipping through a window, birdsong in the morning, a hot cup of coffee, or a quiet moment undisturbed. All of it becomes a kind of magic, if we are truly there to feel it. 4. Negative visualization. Preparing for every scenario. One of humanity's deepest fears doesn't stem from reality. It comes from imagination. What we envision in our minds is often far more terrifying than what actually occurs. And the paradox is this: the more we try to avoid what we fear, the more our mind clings to it, like a lingering ghost. Stoicism doesn't teach blind optimism, nor does it promote extreme pessimism. Instead, it encourages a practice that may seem surprising to modern minds. Visualize the worst that could happen, not to torment ourselves, but to train the spirit, increase readiness, and most importantly, to cultivate gratitude for what we already have. This is a classical Stoic exercise known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But unlike anxious rumination, this method calls for facing fear with clarity, intention, and purpose. For example, instead of brushing aside the fear of losing your job, sit down and deliberately imagine, what if I'm let go tomorrow? You may feel anxiety arise, but then you move forward. What would I do first? Who could help? What skills do I have that could apply elsewhere? This conscious rehearsal trains the mind to become familiar with the worst-case scenario. So if it ever happens, we're not shocked, not crushed. In fact, we may already have plans B, C, and D in place. This practice reduces surprise and the sense of losing control, two major fuels of anxiety. Remember, what we fear most is not what is happening, but the uncertainty of what might happen. But if we have already lived through that scenario in our minds, calmly and logically, fear loses much of its power. We can apply this practice to every area of life. Afraid of losing someone you love? Imagine a day when they are no longer here, not to cause pain, but to remind you to cherish them more deeply today. Fearful of failure in a project, envision its collapses, and realize you would still survive, still learn something. Dreading rejection? Picture a blunt dismissal and notice how it doesn't diminish your worth. This form of negative visualization builds a kind of emotional immunity. Just as the body needs exposure to mild bacteria to develop antibodies, the mind needs gentle exposure to fear in order to grow resilient. A mind that has never faced the worst remains fragile, prone to panic when life veers off course. But a trained mind, though it still feels pain, won't break. There's a powerful example from modern life. Pilots, firefighters, and emergency physicians are all trained using worst-case simulations. They are taught not just what to do when everything goes well, but what to do when everything goes wrong. That preparation is what separates those who remain calm in crisis from those paralyzed by fear. We, though not emergency workers, can train our minds in the same way. We don't need to live in fear. Just spend a few minutes each week to sit down, write out what could go wrong, and ask, if this happens, what will I do? Then write, How can I reduce the chance of this happening? And if it does, what can I learn from it? When we can face the worst without panic, we become free. Fear begins to lose its grip once we are willing to look directly at it. And the unexpected gift is this: after each exercise, life, as it is, feels infinitely more precious. Negative visualization does not make us pessimists. On the contrary, it makes us more grateful, more mindful, more attuned to the small things. A quiet morning, a friend still by our side, a job still in motion, a body still strong. Because we know that everything can vanish, we finally begin to live more fully with what is here. 5. Building mental resilience. Hardship doesn't break you. It trains you. Within each of us burns a small flame, sometimes faint, sometimes steady, but it never fully goes out. It is the will to rise after the fall, the resolve to resist being overwhelmed by adversity. But for that flame to grow stronger, it must be forged. And the best forge is hardship itself. We tend to avoid pain. That's natural. Survival instincts lead us toward comfort, safety, and away from anything unpleasant. But here's a truth few want to hear. Without struggle, without failure, without resistance, we never truly grow. For it is precisely in the moments of weakness, of pain, of panic, that mental resilience is taught. Stoicism doesn't glorify suffering for its own sake. It doesn't praise hardship because it's painful, but because of the inner strength it reveals. The Stoics understood that adversity doesn't come to destroy us. It comes to reveal who we are beneath the surface. Marcus Aurelius lived through war, plague, and rebellion. Epictetus was born a Stoic. Seneca navigated a treacherous political court. These weren't just challenges they endured. They were the very forces that shaped them. Think of how a blade is made. A sharp edge doesn't come from gentle polishing. It comes from grinding against stone, from heat and repeated tempering. Likewise, a resilient will is not formed in comfort. It is built slowly, through the days you're exhausted but keep going, through the rejections you face without giving up, through the moments you nearly break but choose to stand. Mental toughness is never an accident. It is the result of practice, of willingly stepping into discomfort, not to punish ourselves, but to expand our tolerance, to train the inner core. In Stoicism, there is a practice called voluntary discomfort. It means we deliberately place ourselves in less than ideal conditions to learn adaptation. In modern life, this can be simple. Turn off the AC and endure the heat. Skip a meal, sleep on the floor, or commit to a hard habit like rising early every day. The point isn't to boast, it's to remind yourself, I can handle more than I think. When you begin to overcome the small things, you start believing you can face the big ones. For example, you begin the habit of running every morning. At first it's awful, tiring, sleepy, with your mind screaming to quit. But you persist. Slowly, your body adjusts, your will solidifies, and one day, when life throws a real hardship, like losing a job or an emotional crisis, you'll realize you've already been preparing. Endurance doesn't come from avoiding discomfort, but from meeting it day by day. One important note: mental resilience doesn't mean being emotionless. You can still feel sadness, fear, disappointment. But the difference is, those emotions don't control you. A resilient person isn't someone who feels nothing, but someone who feels deeply, yet stays rational, acts rightly, and does not lose themselves. When seen correctly, hardship is the finest teacher of growth. We often wish for an easy life, but what if, instead of asking for life to be gentler, we chose to become stronger? Then, upheaval is no longer catastrophe, it becomes a lesson. Each knockdown is not an ending, it's a launch pad for rising stronger. All of us have known pain. Some were betrayed. Some lost loved ones. Some lost everything. But looking back, you may find those darkest moments were turning points, the times you rediscovered yourself, unlocked inner power, or vowed never to live superficially again. When we grasp this truth, we stop cursing adversity and start being grateful for it. Not because it feels good, but because it's necessary. Pain is not the enemy. It is a wake-up call, a reminder that it's time to grow, to leave the comfort zone, to become the stronger version of ourselves. 6. Let go of the outcome. It's the journey that shapes you. We live in a world that glorifies outcomes as the ultimate destination. Grades, titles, recognition, followers, revenue. Everything seems to revolve around one question: what did you achieve in the end? But Stoicism teaches something radically different. Outcomes do not define you. The path you walk does. And if we keep tying our self-worth to results beyond our control, we will inevitably lose our inner freedom. Let's be honest. How many times have we felt disappointed, not because we didn't try hard enough, but because the outcome didn't meet our expectations? You studied hard for an exam but still failed. You were sincere in a relationship but still got left behind. You did everything right, yet life didn't reward you the way you'd hoped. And in that moment, the feelings of helplessness, hurt, even bitterness can surge. But from a Stoic perspective, we recognize outcomes are always subject to countless external factors, while the journey, our effort, our will, our character, remains fully within our control. Letting go of the outcome doesn't mean giving up. On the contrary, it allows us to pour all our energy into the only thing we truly own: the processes, a path lived with integrity, discipline, and responsibility. A journey where every step is an expression of who we are, not a sprint for applause or approval. Imagine you are an artist. Each day, you paint with focus and sincerity. But can you control how many people will like your work? Can you guarantee it will sell at a high price? No. What you can control are each brushstroke, each detail, each moment you pour your soul into the piece. And that process, more than the result, is what helps you grow and what makes you fulfilled. The same applies to work. Sometimes you labor tirelessly, meet every deadline, even carry the load for others, yet the credit goes elsewhere, or no one notices at all. It hurts, but if you know you acted with responsibility, not for glory, but for value, then you've still won. In a higher game, the one you play with yourself, letting go of the result is not a philosophy for the weak to excuse quitting. It is the mindset of the courageous, those who give without conditions, commit without bargaining, strive without needing a reward. That is the sign of a trained mind. We should set goals, but not let them become burdens. Goals are compass points, not chains. They guide us, but it is the process that forges our character. If we live only for success, we risk losing ourselves with every setback. But if we live for values, we remain steady, regardless of the outcome. Here's a simple example. Imagine caring for a sick loved one. Despite all your efforts, the result may not be what you wished, but no one can deny the love, the patience, the sleepless nights. These are proof of your compassion and inner strength. Whatever the outcome, you have grown through the journey itself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Our job is not to be victorious, but to do what is right." When we understand this, we begin to escape the trap of expectation. We stop comparing ourselves to those who succeed sooner, or lamenting what hasn't yet come, because we now know our true worth lies in how we live each day, not in where we end up. Letting go of the outcome also frees us from the feeling of failure. In a world where achievement is the only yardstick, those without results are labeled losers. But the Stoic, sees it differently. They measure success by another standard. Did you live true to yourself? Did you uphold virtue in adversity? Did you choose what was right, even when no one was watching? If the answer is yes, then you have succeeded in the deepest and most enduring sense. 7. Act despite fear. Courage begins with the first step. There is something about fear we rarely admit. It never fully goes away. No matter how successful or confident you become, there will always be a part of you, small but present, that trembles before the unknown. And that's not wrong. Fear is instinct, but action, that is a choice. In Stoicism, courage is not defined as the absence of fear, but as the willingness to act while fear is still present. It's the line between those who freeze and those who move forward. Despite their inner unrest, we often wait until we feel ready. We wait for our hearts to calm down. We wait for the anxiety to vanish. We wait for conditions to be perfect. But if we wait until fear disappears before we act, we may be waiting forever. The truth is, courage doesn't come before action. It is born in the act itself. Think of a familiar moment. You want to speak up in a meeting, but fear being judged. You want to start a personal project, but fear failure. You want to end a toxic relationship, but fear loneliness. These fears are real, but if you choose to do nothing, you hand over the reins of your life to fleeting emotions rather than reason. Marcus Aurelius lived through years of turmoil, war, rebellion, loss. As emperor, he didn't have the luxury of waiting until he wasn't afraid to act. He took action because he understood. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right, in spite of it. We don't need grand acts to prove our courage. Sometimes, courage is simply sending that apology email, speaking up even when your voice shakes, stepping outside your comfort zone, even when you have no idea what lies ahead. Because each small act, repeated, reshapes how we see ourselves. A practical way to train courage is to break fear into smaller parts. Don't think about giving an entire speech to 2 people. Just focus on starting the first sentence. Don't think about finishing a whole book. Just write 5 words today. When fear is broken down, it becomes manageable, and each small action is like a brick, slowly building the sturdy wall of confidence. Another key is changing how we relate to failure. Many fears come from the fear of being wrong, embarrassed, or rejected. But ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? If you fail, you learn. If you're rejected, you know where not to go. If you're wrong, you get to go. Inaction is the only true danger, because it means abandoning yourself. A friend once told me she delayed applying for a study abroad scholarship for 3 years, simply because she thought she wasn't good enough. Then one day, she applied, nervous, uncertain, and she got in. She didn't succeed because she stopped being afraid. She succeeded because she acted while still afraid. And that decision changed her life. We can't control how we'll feel when we step out of our comfort zones, but we can control whether or not we take action. And that choice, made again and again, reshapes who we are, from someone who avoids to someone who dares, from being led by emotions to leading with intention. You might feel like no one sees your effort, but remember, every time you act in fear, you send a message to yourself that you can trust yourself no matter what. And nothing is more powerful than that kind of self-trust. When courage becomes part of your daily habit, you begin to feel free, not because fear is gone, but because it no longer controls you. You may still tremble, but you won't retreat. You may still worry, but you'll still move. And that is true strength. We often think of philosophy as something distant, reserved for scholars or books. But to me, Stoicism doesn't live on the page. It lives in the small choices I make each day. Every morning, I no longer ask, "What will happen to me today?" Instead, I ask, "How can I respond today in a way that honors the person I aim to become?" I start with simple things. Instead of getting swept up in the chaos of the news, I spend a few minutes writing down 3 things I'm grateful for. When something goes wrong, a criticism, a failed client, I pause and ask myself, is this within my control? That question alone shifts me from reaction to intentional action. There are still days when I feel afraid. Afraid I'm not good enough. Afraid I won't make it in time. But instead of letting fear lead the way, I step forward with trembling hands and work as if the outcome is no longer mine to hold. And the remarkable thing is, each time I choose action over avoidance, I grow a little more. Stoic philosophy never promised that life would be easy, but it gives me a compass so I can live rightly, no matter how chaotic the world around me becomes. And I believe you can begin too, starting today with one small change and a different mindset. We don't need to be superheroes to overcome fear. We just need to become a slightly braver version of ourselves, day by day, choice by choice. If you found this video valuable, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's next. And always remember, fear is part of the path, not a barrier. The journey of self-mastery doesn't begin when fear ends. It begins the moment you take another step, even when your heart is still shaking. See you in the next video.